Chapter 1. Captive Among Giants. The cold metal walls of the containment chamber echoed with the steady thrum of the starship's engines, a monotonous yet oppressive soundtrack to the nightmare that had become Zira's existence. She was a creature of the small, a being whose entire body could fit within the palm of a human hand, but her spirit, though battered and terrified, flickered stubbornly against the shadow of despair. The sterile white light above cast harsh reflections on her iridescent scales, which shimmered faintly in hues of violet and azure, as though the cosmos itself had been distilled into the fragile skin that enveloped her diminutive frame. Her multifaceted eyes, large and gleaming with 1,000 facets like polished gemstones, darted wildly as she pressed herself into the cold floor, seeking an illusion of safety in a place devoid of refuge. Captured in the aftermath of a raid on her homeworld, Zira's tiny form was shackled by human technology far beyond her understanding, grasped in magnetic restraints and surrounded by translucent energy fields humming with quiet but unyielding power. The vastness of the room dwarfed her, every inch a reminder of her vulnerability among the towering humans who moved with an unsettling mix of curiosity and clinical detachment. To her, these giants were incomprehensible massive creatures whose very breath sent tremors through the air, whose voices thundered like storms, and whose hands could crush entire colonies without a thought. But beneath the fear and the pain simmered a confusion that gnawed relentlessly. Why was she treated as a prisoner? Why did these strange beings look at her with a mixture of hunger, suspicion, and pity? Her mind was a whirlwind of memories, flashes of the lush, crystalline forests of Elian, where she had danced through bioluminescent glades with others of her kind, their songs weaving through the night air like threads of silver light. The touch of her mother's gentle hands, the warmth of the communal fires, and the whispered legends of ancient guardians who protected their world from the darkness beyond. Those memories were now bittersweet relics, distant and fragile as the stars she once reached for. The raid had shattered everything. Her people scattered, hunted, or worse, eradicated by an enemy she still struggled to understand. And now she was trapped in this cold, alien metal cage, isolated and broken, a tiny prisoner in a vast and merciless galaxy. The humans who came to study her did so with a strange blend of fascination and coldness. They poked and prodded, their instruments probing her body with indifferent precision, recording data and drawing conclusions she could neither comprehend nor control. She had learned to flinch at their touch, to hide the subtle flicker of her wings beneath her shell, but none of it protected her from the endless questions and the harsh judgments whispered in their alien tongues. They called her an anomaly, a specimen, even a threat, though she was nothing more than a frightened child in a foreign world. Her pleas for mercy were often met with silence or worse, a dismissive glance, a mechanical restraint tightened, the cold flash of a scanner's light passing over her delicate form. Yet, even in the depths of her captivity, Zira's mind sought refuge in the stories she clung to like a lifeline. Tales passed down from her ancestors spoke of beings who walked among the stars with kindness in their hearts, who understood the pain of loss and the value of mercy. She dared to wonder if such beings might exist beyond the cold metal walls and harsh fluorescent lights, if somewhere in this vast and uncaring universe there was hope for those like her. But hope was a dangerous thing, fragile as the wings she could no longer unfurl, easily crushed beneath the weight of reality. Her days blurred into endless cycles of observation and confinement, punctuated only by the arrival of a new human, one different from the others. He was a scientist named Dr. Elias Grant, whose eyes held a spark of curiosity tempered by compassion, whose voice was gentle amidst the harshness. Unlike the others who saw her as merely a subject, Elias spoke softly, moved carefully, and listened in ways that no one else dared. He asked questions about her home, her people, and her fears, not with suspicion but with genuine wonder. Slowly, Zira's terror began to mingle with cautious curiosity. Could this giant be different? Could humans be more than the monsters of her nightmares? But even as this fragile trust began to take root, the shadows outside the sanctuary grew darker. Whispers of a greater menace, a force far crueler than any human, began to seep into the corridors. Something ancient and malevolent, lurking beyond the veil of stars, threatened not only Zira's fate, but the fragile peace of the entire galaxy. And as the walls closed in tighter, she would come to realize that the true monsters were not always those who towered above her in size, but those who lurked in the dark corners of power and fear. In the battle for survival and mercy, Zira's tiny form would become a beacon of unexpected strength, challenging everything she had believed about monsters, humanity, and hope. Days bled into nights or whatever passed for such cycles aboard the starship for Zira, who could no longer distinguish the passage of time beyond the cold routines imposed by her captors. The once vibrant symphony of life on Elian was replaced by the clinical, mechanical monotony of the containment chamber. Yet her mind remained fiercely alive, swirling with a tempest of emotions: fear, confusion, anger, and a stubborn ember of hope that refused to be extinguished. The humans, those towering beings who had dragged her from the skies of her homeworld, remained an enigma, monsters and saviors intertwined in a paradox she struggled to unravel. Dr. Elias Grant was unlike the others. His presence brought a subtle shift to her existence, an unpredictable variable in a world ruled by cold logic. Unlike the detached scientists and guards who treated her as a mere specimen, Elias approached with reverence. His eyes, soft and searching, sought to understand rather than control. He spoke to her in measured tones, careful not to overwhelm the fragile creature before him. With delicate hands, he adjusted the restraints that bound her and offered water synthesized to mimic the rare nectar of her home. Zira, wary but desperate, accepted these small kindnesses, sensing in Elias a spark of something rare: empathy. Over countless sessions, Elias communicated in painstakingly slow gestures and symbols, trying to bridge the vast gulf between species and language. He shared stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and the intricate lives of humans, who, like her, were vulnerable yet capable of astonishing resilience and compassion. Zira, though unable to respond with words, listened with growing fascination, her eyes reflecting flickers of understanding and curiosity. For the first time, she glimpsed a sliver of hope that not all giants were monsters. Some might be allies, even friends. Yet, beneath the surface of this fragile sanctuary, shadows lurked. The ship's corridors whispered of secrets, whispers of experiments conducted beyond ethics, of plans to weaponize alien biotechnologies, and of a galactic power that would stop at nothing to dominate. Zira was not merely a prisoner, but a key piece in a much larger and far more dangerous game. The true monsters were not always those who wielded physical might, but those who wielded fear, greed, and cruelty cloaked in the guise of progress. As Zira's trust in Elias grew, so did the stakes, and the small alien would soon face horrors far beyond her captivity, forcing her to confront the true nature of monsters, human and otherwise. Chapter 2: Awakening and Alliances. The first tentative rays of trust between Zira and Elias blossomed into something profound, though neither could yet name it. Elias, driven by a deep conviction that the tiny alien was more than a captive specimen, began to challenge the rigid protocols of the ship's command. His efforts to protect Zira from the harsher experiments made him an outlier among his peers, earning wary glances and veiled threats. But his resolve was unshaken. Behind closed doors, he worked tirelessly to develop a plan to secure Zira's safety and unlock her true potential, convinced that she held the key to understanding forces that could change the course of the galaxy. Zira, though still fragile and fearful, began to awaken not only physically but mentally. Elias's presence, the soft hum of the starship's engine, and the distant stars visible through reinforced glass fueled her resolve to survive and fight back. She started to experiment with the limits of her containment, testing the energy fields, probing the weaknesses in her restraints, and quietly observing the humans who moved through the corridors like titans unaware of the strength simmering in the small alien before them. Her mind, sharp and ancient, sought allies beyond Elias, others among the ship's crew who might share his compassion or whose curiosity might be turned toward rebellion. Amidst the cold halls, she found unexpected solidarity with a small faction of dissenters: engineers disillusioned with the ship's militaristic mission, medics haunted by the ethical voids of their orders, and even a few guards whose consciences rebelled against the cruelty inflicted on beings like Zira. Through Elias's cautious network, she began to communicate, her stories and pleas carried in secret messages and stolen moments. Her diminutive size became an advantage rather than a weakness, slipping through vents, overhearing conversations, and gaining insights that could unravel the dark plans that threatened not just her, but the fragile peace of countless worlds. Yet, the true test of her awakening came when the ship's shadowy overseers intensified their efforts, pushing Zira toward a fate that would extinguish her light forever. In that crucible of terror and defiance, the tiny alien would learn the true meaning of mercy, strength, and courage, and come to see that the monsters she feared were not always those who looked most terrifying. As alliances formed in the unlikeliest of places, and battles raged both within and beyond the ship's cold hull, Zira's journey from captive to warrior began in earnest. A journey that would challenge the very nature of humanity and alienkind alike. The fragile network of allies that Zira and Elias had begun to weave within the vast and impersonal starship was both a beacon of hope and a powder keg waiting to explode. The dissenters, disillusioned engineers who secretly sabotaged the ship's more aggressive functions, medics who risked their careers to offer forbidden comfort, and guards who quietly turned their backs on the harshest orders were scattered and vulnerable. Yet together, their combined efforts formed the faint pulse of resistance, a whispered promise that not all within the towering metal giant were agents of cruelty. Zira found herself at the heart of this quiet rebellion, her tiny voice carried on the wind of secrecy and courage, her very existence a challenge to the machinery of oppression that sought to break her. Elias had become more than a protector. He was a catalyst, daring to question not only the morality of their mission but the very nature of humanity itself. His eyes, once filled with detached curiosity, now glowed with conviction as he stood against his superiors, advocating for Zira's freedom and for a reevaluation of the ship's brutal purpose. His defiance placed him in peril, threats whispered in dark corridors, attempts to isolate him from his allies, and relentless surveillance designed to crush his spirit. Yet, with every attempt to silence him, his resolve only hardened, fueled by the belief that mercy and understanding were not weaknesses but the greatest strengths in a galaxy teetering on the brink of war. For Zira, the awakening was not merely intellectual but profoundly emotional. The kindness shown by Elias and the tentative solidarity of the dissenters cracked the walls of fear and despair that had encased her heart. She began to see the humans not as faceless monsters, but as complex beings capable of compassion and cruelty alike. The lessons of her homeworld of unity, resilience, and the power of hope found echoes in these unlikely friendships. Yet, the shadows remained long and threatening. The ship's overseers, aware of the growing unrest and the potential for rebellion, tightened their grip, deploying harsher measures and accelerating the experiments designed to harness alien biotechnologies for militaristic domination. In the cold, endless nights aboard the starship, Zira's dreams were filled with visions of freedom and flight scenes of her small form soaring above the luminescent forests of Elion, unbound and whole. But these dreams were tempered by stark awakenings to the brutal reality of captivity and the ever-present danger closing in around her. The true battle lay ahead, not only for her survival, but for the soul of a galaxy divided between fear and hope. As plans for escape and resistance solidified, Zira's tiny form became a symbol, a rallying point for those who dared to believe that mercy could prevail over monstrosity, that humanity's capacity for kindness might yet outshine its darkest impulses. Chapter 3: Flames of Rebellion. The quiet defiance that simmered beneath the starship's polished surfaces erupted suddenly, a blaze of courage and chaos that shattered the fragile order imposed by the ruthless overseers. It began with whispered messages and covert meetings in hidden compartments, plans hatched by engineers who sabotaged weapon systems, medics who smuggled healing supplies to prisoners, and guards who turned their weapons away from innocent captives. Zira, once a frightened captive cowering in the shadows, now stood at the forefront of this rebellion, her small size a secret advantage as she navigated the labyrinthine corridors and evaded the relentless eyes of her captors. Elias became the rebellion's voice, rallying the disparate factions with passionate pleas for justice and mercy. His defiance was a beacon in the darkness, inspiring others to risk everything for a chance at freedom. Together, they orchestrated a bold plan not merely to escape the confines of the starship, but to expose the sinister machinations driving the war machine that sought to dominate countless worlds. The stakes were monumental, and failure meant not just capture or death, but the extinguishing of a fragile hope that had taken root in the coldest corners of space. As the uprising surged, Zira's role evolved from prisoner to warrior. The tiny alien who had begged for mercy now wielded that very mercy as a weapon, showing compassion even to those who once threatened her, seeking to break the cycle of fear and violence with acts of unexpected kindness. Her presence among the rebels was a living testament to the truth she had uncovered, that humans, for all their faults, were not the monsters she had feared. The real monsters were the shadows of hatred, the chains of prejudice, and the cold calculations of power that threatened to consume all. In the heat of the rebellion, alliances were forged and broken, sacrifices made, and truths revealed. The starship's corridors echoed with the sounds of conflict and hope intertwined, a symphony of resistance led by a tiny alien whose spirit refused to be crushed. The journey ahead was fraught with peril, but Zira and her newfound allies were ready to face whatever darkness awaited. For in their hearts burned a flame that no captivity, no cruelty, could extinguish: the unyielding light of mercy, courage, and the fight for a future where monsters were not defined by their form, but by the choices they made. The rebellion within the starship was a delicate dance of shadows and whispers, a battle fought not just with weapons, but with wills. Zira, despite her tiny size, became a force of nature, her presence a spark that ignited courage in the hearts of those who had long surrendered to despair. Her movements through the labyrinthine corridors were almost ghost-like, slipping through vents, hiding in machinery bays, and delivering stolen data that revealed the depths of the Overseer's cruelty. Every small victory, the sabotage of a weapon system here, the safe passage of a captive there, was a thread woven into a tapestry of resistance that grew stronger with each passing moment. Elias, too, became a pillar of the uprising, his knowledge of the ship's systems and his unwavering moral compass galvanizing the fractured crew. His speeches were not grand oratory, but quiet urgings, calls to remember their humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness. He reminded them that mercy was not weakness but the fiercest defiance of all, a refusal to become the monsters the system demanded they be. Many who had once been complicit found themselves moved by his conviction, turning their backs on orders and risking everything for the chance at redemption. But the overseers were ruthless, their grip tightening as the rebellion spread like wildfire. Security forces unleashed patrols armed with brutal weaponry and advanced tracking technology, their orders clear: crush the insurrection and reclaim control at any cost. Battles erupted in narrow corridors and maintenance shafts, echoes of gunfire and desperate cries reverberating through the cold steel halls. Zira, though small and fragile in appearance, fought with the ferocity of her ancestors. Her wings, once folded in fear, now shimmered with the energy of defiance as she evaded capture and aided her comrades. She became a symbol, a legend whispered among the rebels, a tiny flame that no darkness could snuff out. Amidst the chaos, bonds formed that transcended species and history. Zira found herself protected not only by Elias, but by a growing circle of allies. A stoic human engineer named Mara who risked her life to shield the tiny alien. A grizzled veteran medic haunted by his past, but renewed by hope. And even a few guards who had rejected their orders and turned against their former masters. Together, they embodied the possibility of unity in a fractured galaxy, a promise that compassion could bridge even the deepest divides. Yet, the rebellion's success hinged on a desperate gamble, a daring plan to seize control of the ship's central command and broadcast the truth of the Overseer's atrocities to the galaxy beyond. It was a mission fraught with peril, demanding precision, courage, and sacrifice. Zira, despite her size, volunteered to lead, knowing that her unique abilities were essential for navigating the ship's complex systems and security protocols. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination as she prepared to confront not only the physical dangers, but the ghosts of her past, the pain of captivity, the betrayal of her people, and the haunting question of who the real monsters truly were. As the night of the assault descended, the ship became a crucible of fire and steel. Every corridor was a battlefield, every shadow a threat. Zira moved with grace and purpose, her cybernetic enhancements amplifying her natural agility. She bypassed security locks, disabled surveillance grids, and evaded patrols with the precision of a seasoned warrior. The tension was suffocating, the stakes impossibly high. But beneath the pressure burned a fierce hope, the belief that mercy, courage, and the refusal to surrender to cruelty could rewrite the fate of worlds. In the final moments, as Zira accessed the command terminal and prepared the broadcast, she faced a chilling realization. The monsters she feared were not those who looked alien or different, but those who embraced fear, hatred, and oppression in the name of power. The humans who had once seemed terrifying now revealed themselves as complex beings, capable of kindness and cruelty alike. It was a truth both painful and liberating, one that would shape her path forward. With a resolute breath, Zira sent the message, a clarion call to the galaxy, a testament to resilience, mercy, and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be broken. As the signal pulsed outward, the tiny alien who had begged for mercy stood tall, no longer a captive but a beacon of hope, ready to face whatever darkness awaited with wings unfurled and heart ablaze. The tension aboard the starship was palpable, thickening the air with every cautious step Zira took through its labyrinthine corridors. The rebellion's heartbeat echoed in hushed whispers, the secret meetings held in forgotten maintenance bays and behind sealed bulkheads. Every small act of defiance, every sabotaged circuit and smuggled message, was a thread woven into the growing fabric of resistance. Zira, despite her minuscule size and fragile frame, had become an indispensable force, her agility and intimate knowledge of the ship's hidden veins allowing her to slip past guards and security systems that no larger being could hope to evade. Her presence was both a symbol and a weapon, a reminder that courage often came in the smallest packages and that mercy could be as powerful as any blaster. Elias, standing resolute at the rebellion's forefront, marshaled his allies with quiet determination. His vision of hope was not rooted in vengeance, but in justice, conviction that true strength lay in compassion and unity, even among the most fractured and unlikely allies. Engineers, medics, disillusioned guards all gathered under his banner, risking everything to dismantle the oppressive regime that sought to control the galaxy through fear and subjugation. His faith in Zira was unwavering, seeing in her not only a victim but a catalyst for change, a living testament to the possibility of redemption and reconciliation. But the overseers were ruthless, deploying advanced security drones, biometric scanners, and elite guards to quash the uprising before it could ignite into full-scale rebellion. Battles flared in narrow passageways, their clangor muffled by the ship's thick steel walls, but reverberating in the hearts of all who fought. Zira moved with precision and grace, her tiny frame weaving through chaos, disabling security nodes, and delivering vital intelligence to her comrades. Her cybernetic enhancements amplified her abilities, but it was her indomitable will that truly made her unstoppable. Each step forward was a defiance against the darkness threatening to consume them all. In the pivotal moments of the uprising, the rebels executed a daring plan to seize the ship's central command. Zira was chosen to infiltrate the heavily guarded control center, her small size granting her access where others could not venture. Navigating through a maze of electronic locks, sensor arrays, and patrolling guards, she reached the heart of the ship's operations. Her hands trembled as she interfaced with the terminal, the weight of destiny pressing upon her. With a steady breath, she activated the broadcast system, transmitting the truth of the overseer's atrocities across the vast reaches of space. The message was clear: a call to arms, a plea for mercy, and a declaration that monsters were not defined by appearance, but by their actions. As the signal pulsed outward, Zira felt a surge of hope and fear intertwined. The ship trembled with approaching reinforcements and the looming threat of retaliation. Yet, In that crucible of conflict, she stood unyielding, a tiny alien who had begged for mercy, but found within herself the courage to become a beacon of resistance and hope. The battle was far from over, but the tides had turned. The real monsters were not the humans who had captured her, but those who embraced cruelty and hatred. Together with her allies, Zira was ready to face the darkness and forge a new future, one where mercy triumphed over monstrosity, and even the smallest voice could change the fate of worlds. Chapter 4: Flight to Freedom. The aftermath of the rebellion was a turbulent time of reckoning and renewal aboard the starship and beyond. The broadcast that Zira had sent rippled across the galactic network, shattering illusions and igniting fires of rebellion in distant colonies and star systems. The oppressive regime that had sought to enslave and silence countless beings faced mounting resistance, fractured by the courage of those who dared to stand against it. Within the starship itself, the rebels consolidated their control, transforming the once cold and sterile vessel into a sanctuary of hope and liberation. Zira, no longer a prisoner but a leader, took her place at the forefront of this new era. Her wings, once folded in fear, now spread wide, a symbol of resilience and freedom. With Elias and their diverse coalition of allies by her side, she journeyed beyond the confines of captivity, seeking not only to heal the scars of the past, but to build bridges between species, cultures, and hearts. The tiny alien who had once begged for mercy had become a beacon of light in the galaxy's darkest hours, proving that the truest monsters were those who chose cruelty over compassion. As they navigated the endless expanse of space, Zira's eyes were fixed on the horizon, not just of stars, but of possibility. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers old and new, but she embraced it with unwavering hope. Together with her human and alien allies, she would soar toward a future where mercy was the mightiest force, where the galaxy was united not by fear, but by understanding and love. The flight to freedom was not just a physical escape, but a transformation of spirit, a testament to the power of mercy to conquer even the deepest darkness. And as the stars stretched out before them like a tapestry of endless potential, Zira soared on wings forged from courage, kindness, and the unbreakable will to be free. The fragile calm that followed the rebellion was but the first breath of a new beginning, a breath heavy with the promise of freedom and the weight of hard-won lessons. The starship, once a prison of cold metal and ruthless intent, now pulsed with renewed life, its corridors echoing with voices no longer whispered in fear, but spoken in hope. Zira stood at the heart of this transformation, no longer the trembling captive begging for mercy, but a radiant symbol of resilience and change. Her wings, once folded tightly in despair, now spread wide, both a literal and metaphorical testament to her journey from helplessness to power. They shimmered under the soft glow of the ship's ambient lights, a fusion of her ancient heritage and the human ingenuity that had saved her. Elias stood beside her, a steadfast companion through every trial, his eyes reflecting the fierce pride of a man who had dared to see beyond fear and prejudice. Together, they looked out through the vast observation window, the infinite expanse of stars stretching before them like a canvas of infinite possibilities. Beyond lay a galaxy fractured by war and mistrust, but also ripe with the potential for healing and unity. Zira's message had sparked a movement, a call to arms for compassion and justice that resonated across star systems, awakening countless souls to the truth that monsters were not defined by the shape of their bodies, but by the choices they made. The ship's crew, once divided by fear and oppression, now rallied around a shared vision of a future where understanding triumphed over hatred. Engineers worked tirelessly to repurpose the starship into a vessel of peace and exploration. Medics expanded their care to encompass not only physical healing, but the restoration of broken spirits. And guards who had once enforced tyranny now pledged their loyalty to the cause of freedom. Alliances forged in the crucible of rebellion grew stronger, uniting species and cultures once divided by suspicion and fear. For Zira, the journey was both an end and a beginning. She returned to the memories of Elian, the luminous forests, the songs of her people, the dreams of soaring freely among the stars, and carried them within her heart as she charted a new path. She vowed to ensure that no other tiny alien, no other being, would ever have to beg for mercy in a cold metal cage. Her wings, strengthened by steel and spirit, would carry her not only through the vastness of space, but into the hearts of those who longed for hope. As the starship glided silently into the star-studded void, a fleet of ships from allied systems joined in a growing procession, a beacon of solidarity that would traverse the galaxy. Together, they would face the shadows that sought to divide and conquer, armed not with weapons of destruction, but with the enduring power of mercy, courage, and unity. Zira's flight was a declaration that even the smallest voice could echo across the cosmos, challenging darkness with light. In the vast silence between stars, where countless destinies intertwined, Zira soared on wings of hope, free, unbroken, and destined to rewrite the story of a galaxy that had once seen her only as prey. The real monsters had been revealed not by their form, but by their hearts, and humanity, flawed yet capable of compassion, had proven that monsters could be overcome. Her story became legend, a timeless reminder that mercy was the mightiest weapon of all, and that even the tiniest among us could change the fate of worlds. The galaxy, vast and mysterious, awaited her next flight, one not of captivity, but of boundless freedom and endless possibility.